Hi everyone, it's Eugene Liscio here and welcome to Click 3D. This is the program where we talk about photogrammetry, we talk about 3D scanning, technology, hardware, software, and every now and then we get to interview somebody pretty cool. Now today what I'm going to be doing is a bloodstain impact, and in fact I've already made it behind me here, and I'll kind of walk you through the basic process of how I do this, how to document it, and then I'll very quickly run through the analysis part. I'll probably save a more in-depth video on the analysis for a later time. But I have here the Artec EVA scanner, and this is an old scanner. I just did a video on it not too long ago, but you can use something like this to document a small area. And so what I have here is a bloodstain impact that's been done. And so what I'm going to walk through is how I can use this scanner to document this impact, and then what we're going to do is take it away, process it on a computer, and then run it through a very quick analysis. And the benefit of using something like this has to do with scale. So whenever you're dealing with a structured light scanner, or even almost any laser scanner in general, they're typically fixed to a specific sized object. So for example, Artec or even other manufacturers like Faro will have a scanner that's suited to a certain size object. It has a certain field of view and a certain level of accuracy. Now in this case, the EVA here has let's say like a 1 foot square or like a 30 centimeter square window that you can scan. So if you're trying to capture a really big room, this is probably not going to be the simplest thing to do. They have another scanner which has a wider field of view. That's the Artec Leo. That might be a little simpler. Now the Faro Freestyle, for example, also has a pretty wide field of view, but it's not going to pick up the level of detail that you can get with a smaller scanner. So you kind of have to pick and choose your battles and what you want to use and how much you want to capture. So in this case, I'm only interested in picking up a very small area here. So maybe maximum, like a 1 meter by 1 meter. So maybe 1 meter on this side of the wall, and then 1 meter on this side of the wall, part of the floor, and then that's it. So I wouldn't go through the entire room and scan everything here. That wouldn't be practical to do with this. Now the benefit of doing that is I'm going to get some really good texture. I'll be able to pick up a lot of the little blood stains that would normally drop off, let's say if I was using a terrestrial laser scanner, like a larger laser scanner. And the quality of what I get, like all these tiles that are down here, these little bumps and these little things, I'll be able to pick up like the space between the tiles, the grout, the baseboard and everything. I'm going to pick up a lot of little details. So let me walk you through the basic process, and we're going to analyze it and have a bit of fun. So see you in a bit. Okay, so this is the bloodstain rig that I'm going to be using. It's a really simple contraption made with stuff that I just had lying around. So what I have is a PVC pipe, and there's just a copper rod here with some holders, and then there's just a little bit of a base with a little target on here. And what I do is I actually have a piston in here. Let me take this out. So this little piston is what falls from the inside of the pipe down and then hits the target. And I just have a little nail with a string on it at different heights, so I can choose the height from which I drop this. So I'm just going to put this in here like that. And what I'm going to do is I have to level the pipe, make sure it's level in sort of this way and that way in 2 axes. Make sure that the little piston is falling straight down and that it's going to hit this right here. And once I get that set up, I'm going to put some blood here. I will probably put some plastic around here, and I just stand on the other side of the plastic so I don't make a mess of myself. And I'm just going to pull the little pin here. So I'll just let that go and you'll see what it looks like. Just like that. So the piston will hit the blood's going to make a mess, and then what we're going to do is we are going to analyze the impact pattern from there. So let's give it a go. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, Okay, so we have our bloodstain impact here. You can see what it's done on the walls here. We have a whole bunch of different types of bloodstains. Now we got some flow here from these ones. So what we're gonna do is just give this a second to dry, and we're gonna photograph this, we're gonna 3D scan it, and then later on we'll do the analysis. Okay, so I'm just gonna pull this up here, but the rig is still in the same spot, like that. We'll wash up, and then we'll do the analysis. Okay, so let's talk about the process of documenting a bloodstain like this for a 3D analysis. So it basically goes like this. The first step is going to be that you need to inspect the bloodstains, okay, or the pattern that's on the wall, and you want to select the best stains for the analysis. So you're not going to use every single stain, you're just going to pick small groups and then decide which ones you're going to use from those groups. So for example, here there's a whole bunch of very elliptical stains, a lot of good directionality. Here there's a bunch as well, they're pretty good. There are a lot more over here as well. If I move out of the way, there's some here as well, and they're kind of on this side. There's a whole bunch of bloodstains that I see that could be useful, and even on this side here. And basically there's a series of radiating stains from where the impact location was that I showed. So what I'm going to do is maybe just pick like 3 locations, and then I'll just do 3 of these. So what I want to be able to do now is mark the areas that I want to use. And so if I want to use a series of stains here, then usually what I'll do is I'll outline it either with some tape or some markers, like little round sticky markers. I can just put them in 3s. And depending on the software that you're using, you may place the markers in a different configuration. So the software that I'm using, which is Zone 3D, it wants 3 points, and those 3 points need to be, the first 2 are more or less horizontal, and then 1 point which is above or below that horizontal pair. Now it doesn't have to be perfectly horizontal, just more or less, and then it kind of just works. By picking the 3 points on the scan data and then picking the 3 points on the photograph. So the basic idea is, when we scan this, we're not scanning the wall for the bloodstains. We don't do the analysis directly on the scan data. And because if you're using a laser scanner, like a terrestrial laser scanner or something else, it may not have the same kind of accuracy or scale, or it doesn't have like really good sort of like photo textures where you can actually see these bloodstains at a higher resolution. And some of these bloodstains are rather large right now, and often they're very, very small. Like some are so small you're not going to see them in the camera. The other thing is that you can grid this differently, or for example, you can create like a square all the way around here or whatever. And but basically identifying these clusters right now, I'll probably choose 3, 1, maybe 2, and then maybe 3, one of these 2 here, and that'll be good enough for this particular example. After that, once I select them, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some tape and I'll outline them for you so you can see exactly which clusters I'm going to be using, and then I need to photograph them. So I'm going to grab my digital camera, I'll set it up, take some photos, and then I'll have perpendicular photos actually, so I have to make sure that the camera is more or less perpendicular here. And so when I do that, what I'm going to be doing is I'll be scanning after that. But the trick is that you take the scan data and you take the photographs, and basically you pick a point on a photograph and you match it with a point that is on the laser scanner data. So the XY pixel location gets mapped to an XYZ or a 3-dimensional coordinate. And when you do it for 3 of them, it basically takes the image and it's able to assign the coordinates so it knows where it is in space. So it basically scales it and then places it on the wall in the correct location. From there, then in the software, what you do is you mark the bloodstains, and then as you mark the bloodstains, you basically end up with your estimate for the area of origin, is what a lot of people refer to it to, or a region of origin. There's different ways that people refer to it. Okay, so first what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the clusters that I'm going to use. You'll be able to see it very, very clearly, and when I scan it, you'll be able to see it in the scan for sure. Then I'm going to photograph it, and then I'll go from there. Actually, sorry, I'm going to mark it, then I'm going to photograph it, and then I'm going to scan it. And once I scan it, I'll bring it back to my computer, and then I'll do the analysis. If the video gets a little bit too long, then maybe what I'll do is I'll just run through the analysis really quickly, and I'll save a bloodstain pattern analysis for another video. So I'm going to get to it. Okay, so you might have seen what we did here. I have this little, just a square template that I made out of wood. And this is kind of useful because it's obviously perfectly square. And what I do is I frame the group of stains that I want. And then we just placed some tape around and we've labeled them A, B, and C. And so now what I'm gonna need to do is take some photographs of these so that I can combine it with the scan data that I get from the Artec EVA scanner. So let me take some photos of this and then we'll move on to the scanning part. Okay, that didn't take long. Now we need to scan. Okay, so we have created an impact. We have inspected the stains that are on the wall. We've marked off different clusters of stains that we're going to be using for the analysis. And we've also marked them with tape and taken the photographs. And that's basically what we need to do to get to the point of scanning, which is where we are now. Now, I mentioned before that I'm using the Artec EVA scanner. So this is an older scanner. This model has been around for years and years, but it does a really great job. Now, you can see here, I've got my laptop here and I've got some wires. So this particular instrument is wired, and so it doesn't mean that I'm free to sort of move all over the place, okay? So it's meant for a smaller area, and I can do it in like pieces if I had a larger area and then just kind of connect them together later on. That's absolutely possible. But there are some considerations that you have to keep in mind when you are scanning with something like this. And so a perfect example is this plain part of the wall. Now here I've got a lot of blood stains and some bigger things, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the blood stains are very small and they don't really show up very well. So the way that this scanner works when I'm moving around or like doing different things is that it's looking for geometry or texture, color differences and things like that. And that's how it keeps everything aligned and in place. And if I just go on a plain white wall and it's very flat, this is about the worst you can do for any kind of scanner, okay? Especially like a structured light scanner. It doesn't know that this part of the wall, this part of the wall, and this part of the wall are any different from one another. So it will lose tracking. And I'll give you an example of that. I'll show you pretty quickly, how I can start scanning one area, move off into an area that has no texture, that's very flat, and all of a sudden it loses its marbles. When I'm scanning down here, where I've got tile and different texture, or even over here where I've got some of these larger stains, it shouldn't be a problem. But when I start getting out on the periphery here, or if I come across this area here, I could run into some problem. So one of the things that I can do to help this is to add texture. And the way to add texture is either to use like tape or something like that. And maybe what I'll do is I'll outline a boundary here across what it is that I'm going to capture. And that other piece of tape will help with the tracking. So between the bloodstains, the tape here, and another sort of outline of the area that I'm going to be capturing, that should be fine. That should help me out. Now, in terms of scanning speed, when you're scanning with this instrument, you want to scan slow and steady, okay? So you're not making fast movements or anything else. You really want to be able to, sort of steadily move across, up and down, and just collect all the area that you need. And I'll show you in the software here. I'll be recording my screen so I can demonstrate as well what's happening. But basically, as you're moving along, if you go back over an area, you can tell whether or not you've captured everything there, or if there's any data that's missing or any holes or anything else that you need to fill in. So the software does a pretty good job there. The other thing that you have to remember is how far you are. So this has a limited depth of field. And when I say limited, I mean, there's a range that you can scan in. And there's actually an indicator on the screen that will show you when you're getting too close or too far. It's a little histogram, and it shows you, sort of moves as you get closer and farther away. And basically you want to have the histogram somewhere in the middle of the bar, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, but it really has to do with how far you are. So if you get too close, it just sort of clips off the data. You don't get anything. If you're too far away, same thing happens. So I'm going to be about 1 meter away from the wall, more or less, roughly. I'll get in a little bit closer. I'm going to scan part of the ground or the tile that's here as well. So I'll probably move some things away. And I'll launch the software, get it going, do a scan, and then what I'm going to do is I'll go back and I'll process this data to show you how this section of the wall and the bloodstains come together. After that, I'm ready to do the analysis, and for that I will be using Zone 3D. Now, this will be a really long video if I probably do both, so I think I'm going to focus on the scanning, let you see how this comes together, look at the quality of the data, and I'm only going to be using, I'm not using any new features in the software. There's a couple new features in the software that can give you additional detail and that sort of thing. I'm not going to be doing any of that, just the sort of the regular plain Jane scans that come out of here with texture, and I think even then you'll be pretty impressed. It does a really good job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the tape here just to sort of place a border so you can see what area that I'm going to be scanning. It'll also help with tracking, and then we're going to get to scanning. Okay, so I'm pretty much ready to scan here. I've just got the software set up. There was a few little settings that I had to tweak. I'm shutting off what's called the HD mode, so which will go in and get you even finer details. But because this wall is relatively flat, I'll be absolutely fine scanning in regular mode. I think you'll be pretty impressed with the data and how it looks in the end. So I'm just gonna kick back here and make a little bit more space. And I'm going to be watching my screen because I want to see what I'm capturing. And so you do need a laptop for this. So I've just kind of placed it in front of me, and then I'm going to slowly scan this whole area. I might even do it in a couple or a few pieces, and then we'll go from there and see how it looks. And I can do, a couple, 2 or 3 scans. And I'll just fire this up here by hitting the top button. Okay. So you can see on the screen, if you look at the histogram that's just over here, if I move really close, you can see that all the data sort of fits down here. When I move back, it starts to go up to the top now, and you can see the data starts to clip inside the viewport as I move too far. So where I want to be is just right in the middle here. So this is what I was talking about. So I have to keep an eye on this and just make sure that I'm scanning just at the right distance. So you got to kind of keep moving forward and back. So let's give this a go and let's see what I can do here. All right, so we are now scanning, and I'm going to go up. All right, like this. Get up to the top there, move across, make sure that I get all this. Okay, I can see I got some of that down here. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to go up and down, just being careful, like this.
Yeah, got that, great. Get a little bit of the tile there, go across maybe. I need to go a little bit closer, come across here. All right, you can see it's not too bad, just kind of waving this around like that. I could probably get in a little bit closer here, go up. Well, it just lost it, so I gotta go back. Let me go back down here. Let's see if I go to the corner again. Okay, there we go. All right, so it did lose the tracking a bit, but afterwards it should readjust. I just gotta make sure I get all these areas. And then I'm gonna go back in here. Just try not to shake this too much. I'm gonna turn this around so I can see it. And there we go, and I'm gonna get more of this tile. Like this. You see the tile is no problem. It really picks up the tile really well. No problem at all. Maybe move back a bit. Okay. And okay, you see I have to move a bit closer. There we go. Now we're starting to pick up more data. And I need to go up and get this area here. Like that. Go across, make sure I've got that. Okay. So I think that looks pretty good. Make sure I got that. And I'm going to stop it here. Okay, so I've got some data here. You can see it's slipped over here, okay? But when I scan this, or when I do the registration again or alignment, when I run through the process, it'll help and it'll try to correct some of that. But just in case, what I'm going to do is you can do multiple scans and piece them together. So I'm just going to do one more and then see what I get here. So let's try this again. All right, just gonna go across. And as I'm scanning, I'm just kind of keeping my eye on the histogram there, making sure that I get plenty of data. All right, I'm going to come back this way, make sure I get a bit closer, like that, get that corner. I'm going to come across here, that distance isn't too bad, like that. I'm going to come across, getting a little bit closer. All right. And getting there. I'll just go a little bit higher, make sure that I get this spot here. Now you can see it starts to lose it a bit on the flat section, but that's okay. I think I'm gonna be all right. I've got enough between the two scans, so I'm just gonna stop that there. And I'm gonna have a quick look. Yeah, so there was a little bit of, actually I've got two scans here, but if you look at this one here, it's not bad. There's a little piece that slipped up on the top, but when I process this, it'll actually just put it back together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here and I am going to take my computer back to my desk. I'm going to process all the data up there and I'll show you what we get. Okay? Okay, so I am back at my desk here and I've got the Artec Studio 16 window open, and what I'm going to do is process these scans, fix some of these little pieces that have misaligned. You can actually see even without this little piece, I went over it, so there's another section back here, so I don't even need this, but I'm going to try and correct it, at least in one or both. So I have two scans. So this is the first one. So you can see there's a misalignment here, but again, we're going to make sure that we fix that. And on the second scan here, you can see that I also have a misalignment, but I actually have the surface back here. So this little piece I don't even need, you know, for what it is that I'm going to be doing here. So the basic process, I'll just walk through and I'll do it maybe for this, just for one of them. Maybe I'll do this second one that has this piece here. I mean, I could do it for both. You see they're both here in the view, and they're kind of all over the place. They're not aligned or anything like that. So let's give it a go. I'm going to go over to Tools here, and what I can do is do a global registration. So let's do that first. I'm going to click on this, and what it'll do is go in, look at all the individual frames that it captures, and then try to piece it all together properly so that everything looks aligned. So give it a second here, and then we'll come back when it's done. Okay, so we're back from the registration. There actually was a little problem here that I just had to fix. I went back to the global registration, and I've increased the search radius here to make it a little bit larger, and then a lot of this stuff just snapped back into place. A couple of things, or actually maybe just one here. It looks like there's a little bit of a gap. I'm not going to worry about that because that's actually going to get filled in afterwards. So but we have pretty much the basic alignment together. It looks pretty good. So what I need to do now is I'm probably going to fuse this together. Okay, so right now it's a whole bunch. If I double click on here, it's just a whole bunch of individual frames that are sort of aligned together. But I want to take all these individual frames and create a fusion. Okay, so everything together. So I'm just going to click on Tools. Let me go back here. I'll do some erasing and stuff like that later on, but what I'm going to do here is do the fusion. So I'll probably do a smooth fusion. Most of this is pretty smooth, so I could do that, or a sharp fusion. It'll give me a little bit more details here. So all I have to do, I'm just going to use the default here, and actually let me back out of the scan so I can see everything, and I'm just going to go ahead and go click apply. So again, I'm going to take all the little individual components and then put them together. So let it do its thing, and then we'll come back when this is done. Okay, so the fusion is done, and you'll see here it shows a sharp fusion was completed. So this is the model that's checkmark here that we're working with, and you can see it's got a lot of little cool details. You can even see there's some little bit of geometry where the bloodstains were located. So it did a really good job here. Now this particular model is very, very dense. So if I turn on the wireframe and I zoom in, I mean, you can't even see it yet, but you see when I get really, really close, there are a lot of polygons here. And this is not something that I would want to export just as is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the mesh count here and basically run the mesh simplification. And the nice part about the mesh simplification is that in areas where you have sort of really flat sections of the wall, it'll create larger polygons, okay, so larger patches. And you know, where I need a little bit more detail, maybe down in the corners here or things like that, then even where these tiles are, you'll see that there's a greater density of the mesh. But what it does overall is it really, really helps with minimizing the number of polygons, so it just makes it easier to use in other programs. So let me go ahead, I'm going to hit the apply button here and let this do its thing. Once we come back, we're going to make a few edits to the mesh. Then we're going to be applying some texture, so some of the original color, and then what we'll do is we're going to realign it so that when we export it, it's in the proper coordinate system. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I finished the mesh simplification, and at first glance, it may not look like much. There's a little bit of cleanup that it does, but you can see that it looks more or less the same, just at least on the raw mesh. But if I put on the wireframe, and let me go in here and do that, you'll notice that it has a lot less patches. It's made some big jumps here, but in areas where I've got, you know, more detail, it's sort of, you know, in the flat areas, it sort of gets rid of some of the very, very fine detail. Now, for what I'm doing, I don't need that little fine detail. I kind of need like the overall positions of features and things like that. So this is a really good option for me right now. So what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup. And what I mean by that is I'll probably limit some of the scans here. I can see that where the tape ends. Actually, I do have to build a texture. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll do the texture first, then I'll do some editing, just clean up these edges, making them a little bit more square. Then I'll have to realign everything too, because if you notice up here, you see where my z-axis and y-axis are. It's kind of floating all over the place in space. I don't want to correct that for that just right now. I need to be able to first put the texture and then go from there. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to the texture, and I'm working with the second scan, so I'm going to go EVA 2. Okay, that's the one that I was working with. This is the Sharp Fusion is what I'm going to be actually applying the texture to, but I'm going to be taking the source, the texture source, also from EVA 2. And I'm going to choose export down here. I'll choose a lighter, well, you know what, I'll keep 4096. That's a little bit higher texture resolution, not a problem. And just using the sort of default results here. And I'm going to go ahead, click apply, let it do its thing, and then come back when it's all done. Okay, so we're done here, and what you can see is that it's applied the texture. On the edges here, there's some artifacts from the texture, but no big deal. We can just trim that off, and I'm not really interested what's on the edge. It's really what is inside here, and you can see it did a really good job of applying some of the color and texture and that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is some cleanup here, but you have some options where you can adjust, for example, the brightness and the contrast. You know, if you want to increase that a bit, whatever. But the quality of this and the color is actually really good. I mean, it's very similar to, you know, what is actually there in my little Bloodstain room. And there's some lighting effects here. You can see there's some lighter and darker areas or whatever. But you know, that's just unfortunately the lighting that I had and the way that the flash goes off. So the better lit that the area is, the better results you're going to get. But it does quite a good job of blending it all together, and the details are quite good. So I'm just going to accept this right now. And then what I'm going to do is some editing. So a quick way to edit is just to go up to the editor here like that. And I'm just going to cut out some of these sections here, and there's different ways to do that. So the eraser brush here, there's 2D selections, there's 3D selections, rectangular, there's lasso. So for example, if you hold down the control key here, you can kind of like just draw like a pen kind of thing. I'll probably use something a little bit more square, like a rectangular selection or something like that. So I have to just kind of get it into the right sort of position where I want to cut it, and maybe something like this. I'll just trim this off a bit here, but I need to make sure that I have this just how I want it, like that. And let me see if I can go like this. Maybe I can cut up to about here. Okay. Actually, I want to clear that, what I just had there. Deselect. Let me try this again. So something like this, that little piece there, I can erase. Okay, and then I can go to the side and do the same thing. So pretty simple, you know, nothing fancy. But if I'm going to use the rectangle, I need to have it pretty much square like that. And then I'll just go like this, let's say. Yeah, good enough. Just something I can cut off. Oh, I didn't want that. I cut off too much. So let me try this again. Just let me get the edge here. Okay, it's kind of cutting in there. The patches are a little bit bigger, so I may have to leave that there so I don't delete stuff that I need. But let me say the top here, something like this, like that I can erase. Okay, no problem. And you kind of get the idea. You can go through and then you know, just delete other patches and stuff like that. That one's kind of getting on the edge, but that's okay. So something like this, you can square it up and do some different things, but that's all right. So I'll just leave it at that for now. So the other thing I need to do here is position this thing. So I've just gone into the editor and I'm going to the rough positioning, but what you'll see is that the coordinate system is like way off. And so here what I can do is just select 3 points. So if I go 1, 2, and 3, okay, you'll see that it moves it kind of close to the grid here, something like this. And I can also rotate this as well. Okay, so by choosing the control key and some other things, you'll see the instructions down here: shift left mouse button and shift left and right mouse button. You can do some things. So if I hold down shift and I rotate this around, you see I can kind of like square it up a bit like that. And then I'm going to try to move this. Well, let me move it closer to this origin point. But maybe I have to rotate this around because this is my y-axis. I may want to change this. So for example, in the view, I think I'm going to change this around. I think I'm actually going to rotate this like that. And then this way I'll have it in the coordinate system that I want. And I need to kind of drag this forward. And then what I'm going to do is get this, yeah, something like that. That would be okay. And then I'm going to just, well, let me just tweak it. and then I'm going to move it this way, kind of like that, and then back a bit. Okay, I can just see the axis popping out. So my coordinate system there is somewhere around this corner. I can just see the blue popping out there, and I can tweak that a bit, so I can move it back and forth. And let's see here, maybe just like that. So it takes a little bit of playing around. This is just a rough positioning, but you can see now how it aligns to the grid. And if I'm happy with that, then I can just go apply. And now I've got this aligned in coordinate space. So if I want to export this now to do some more work with it in other software for Bloodstain pattern analysis and that sort of thing, this is where I would do it. Just going up here to File, and then I can go to Export, and I can export this particular mesh. And there's some different options here too. So if I go on Mesh, you'll see that it's got a whole bunch of different options here: PLY, WRL, so different things that I can do. I'm not going to do that. I think the video has been probably long enough. I will do another video on the actual Bloodstain pattern analysis part. That's actually going to take a bit more work, and I don't want this video to be overly long for everybody. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's scanning a Bloodstain pattern with the Artec EVA and then doing some processing. I want to thank everybody, and we will see you next time on Click 3D. Thanks. Bye-bye.